I am back. I am making this video about common misconceptions about Down syndrome. Again, when I was asleep, so I hope you guys can hear me because I rewatched the videos that I make and I'm like, oh my god, I'm talking so quiet. I hate it. So hopefully I'm clear in this video and I don't sound like I'm whispering too much, even though I am. So for this video, again, I do have a lot of people ask me questions about Nova, and a lot of times they are just question based off of misconceptions about Down syndrome. And my job as the parent of a child who has Down syndrome is not to roll my eyes when people ask these questions and not to be like, okay, they don't know, they're dumb. It's to inform people, it's to educate people. That way they know what Down syndrome is, how it works, I guess you could say. So a couple of common misconceptions are questions that I'm asked that to me, as someone who has researched extensively, I guess, I mean, not like PhD level, but have done more research, they don't make sense. These questions are kind of like, what are you talking about? One of them would be, what side does it come from? What side does the Down syndrome come from? Which isn't a really valid question. I mean, unless you're talking about translocation Down syndrome, in which case it does technically derive from one of the parents. Down syndrome isn't a gene that's passed on. It's not like, you know, I guess like having black hair, having curly hair, having straight hair. Down syndrome doesn't really work that way. It is just a random occurrence in cell division. It can happen to anyone, regardless. If I had a cousin who had Down syndrome, that's completely out of the equation. It's just a coincidence that they have Down syndrome and my child has Down syndrome. So it's not something that runs in families. It's not if your second cousin twice removed has Down syndrome, your child has a chance of having Down syndrome. Completely random. Another common misconception that I get a lot is, oh, well, she doesn't really look like she has Down syndrome, so she should be fine. Which doesn't make sense because looks do not equal severity. That's like me saying, I guess you could say to someone who's mixed, oh, you don't really look black, so, I mean, I guess you're not. Like, that doesn't make sense, you know? So, looks do not equal severity. Just because someone might look like they have Down syndrome more than another person, maybe their features are just more prominent, that doesn't mean that they are going to have more intellectual disabilities necessarily. It doesn't mean they're not going to be able to talk or, you know, do certain things versus someone who doesn't look like they have Down syndrome. It's kind of just like any child. Just because maybe me and another Hispanic, you know, who's lighter than me don't look the same, that doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to be better at math or be better at this because I'm darker skinned than them. That's the best kind of way I can put it. So that is a common misconception, that looks equals severity. Oh, she doesn't look like she has Down syndrome, so she's going to be okay. It's not how it works. I do have a couple of people who have mentioned some misconceptions that have been brought to their attention. I made a post on one of my Facebook groups kind of asking moms, because I have a couple, but you know, everyone has different experiences when meeting other parents, other people, especially when they don't have any knowledge of Down syndrome. So I wanted to go ahead and ask them, like, hey, what's some things you guys are hearing? So I do have their stuff pulled up. So let's see, I'm just going to go through a couple. Again, I have a whole bunch, but I just want to go through some, again, to kind of inform you guys in case y'all have any confusion on, you know, what Down syndrome is, how it works. My point, like I said, is to inform, not to roll my eyes at people who don't understand, because before I had Nova, I would have been asking the same questions because I'm genuinely curious. And, you know, there is a line between expressing like curiosity, like, oh wow, so how did that happen, like, you know, what's going on, versus just being blatantly rude. Like, I had recently made a post how You know, I was at an orthopedic, you know, office with my daughter. We were getting some AFOs for her feet, and the guy who was molding her feet, the cast on her feet, looked up and was just like, "Oh, and Dad, did he run when he saw this?" Referring to the fact that Nova had Down syndrome. And that question is just rude. It's not like, no, you don't ask that. Or I've had, you know, a woman who was a nurse. I had gotten sick at the time, and my daughter was in the NICU, so I wanted to make sure I was okay so I can get back in there. And I was telling her, oh yeah, you know, how Nova was in the NICU, what was going on, the fact that she had Down syndrome, and she goes, oh, well, when did you find out? And I said, oh, I found out around 20 weeks. And she's like, oh, so it's probably too late to have an abortion, huh? Like, things like that aren't appropriate. You know, other questions, people who are genuinely curious are really asking to find out information. I don't mind answering. I'm not gonna be like, that's a dumb question. No, and even to those rude people, I'm not someone who's gonna be like in their face like, oh, what the hell did you just say? It's kind of like, okay, that's your thing. So anyway, sorry, that was a little rant, but back to these common misconceptions. So let's see. This person says, people always comment on how my kids look alike as if they aren't supposed to resemble each other because one has Down syndrome. And that is a common misconception. People will assume, oh, because they have Down syndrome, the child has Down syndrome, they're not going to look like their parents for some reason. They're just going to look like this clan of people that have Down syndrome. That, I mean, like I said, it's rude for me to laugh because these people really just are not aware. But no, that's not how it works. Like, this is my child. I'm also giving them my genes. Yes, they do have an extra chromosome that is going to exaggerate some features, but they're still my child. They're still going to have, you know, looks, qualities that I have, characteristics that I have. Thankfully, Nova does not look like her dad. Her dad is actually half black and looks mostly black. He's very dark skinned, darker than me, with curly hair. And yeah, I honestly thought Nova was going to have hair like his, but I guess Nova's genes weren't strong enough, so Nova has hair like mine. Let's see, what else? This one says, just pray about it. It'll go away. Or, you're overreacting. She's a normal child. She just looks different. So, Down syndrome, and this, I have seen it before, that people, parents of children with Down syndrome get asked, oh, so when does she grow out of it? That Down syndrome is not something that someone grows out of. It's not like cancer where the cancer can go away. Oh, they have cancer and then, you know, they can be cancer free. Down syndrome is not like that. You know, when someone has Down syndrome, they have Down syndrome for the rest of their life. That's part of them. It's just like my skin isn't automatically gonna get white one day. It's not how it works. Let's see. Oh, there's a common misconception, and I've had people tell me, or confuse Nova for being autistic because she has Down syndrome, and autism and Down syndrome are two different things. So Nova can be dual diagnosed with autism, but because she has Down syndrome, that does not mean she automatically has autism. So right now she just has Down syndrome. Again, she can be dual diagnosed and have autism as well, but now she doesn't. Just because someone has Down syndrome does not mean that they automatically also have autism. That's another common misconception, and one that I've personally run across. Let's see. Another person said, oh, why does, you know, your son look like you? Well, because we birthed a kid. We birthed them. Let's see. Oh, one common misconception that the moms are the ones who caused the Down syndrome, and again, I could have drank, smoked, ate sushi, I don't know, done everything wrong during pregnancy, and that does not mean that Nova's gonna have Down syndrome. It is a random occurrence in cell division. Nothing that I could have done the same or different would have stopped it. This person says, I get asked whether or not my child has mild or severe Down syndrome. And there is no such thing as mild or severe Down syndrome. Someone, when they have Down syndrome, they have Down syndrome. I guess that's like me saying, me compared to someone else. Like, just because I might be smarter than someone at math or better at someone at reading, we're both still people. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, these two people have Down syndrome. Just because the one might be smarter than the other doesn't mean that their Down syndrome is less severe. It's just like if I was smarter than someone else. You know, people are smarter than other people. People do better than other people. So with Down syndrome, that doesn't mean, oh, they're not up to par with this other person who has Down syndrome. They must have it more severe. It's not how it works. And people still do use the terms high functioning and low functioning. And a lot of people who are parents of children who have Down syndrome and are in the Down syndrome community will oftentimes correct you, like, oh, high functioning isn't appropriate to say. But I personally still do use the term, not necessarily to describe Nova, but I will say it occasionally because that's the best way people explain it. I should probably stop because a lot of people in the community, again, don't use it. But people might say, oh, they're high functioning, but that's just like me compared to someone else. Oh, she's smarter than her. That I'm more high functioning than her. Like, y'all get what I'm saying. Let's see. This one isn't a common misconception, but being asked, oh, why did you keep her? Very common question, though. I was asked one time, or I was told, I guess I should say, after I had told someone that Nova had Down syndrome, they said, wow, why are people with Down syndrome even born? I mean, they're just a waste of life, a waste of resources. And I just kind of stood there like, and the only thing that I could think to say was, well, it's one of the very few chromosomal abnormalities that can sustain life. I was just giving them the scientific version of it, because, times like that, I want to be mad, but these people are just ignorant, and it's very rare for me to get angry about something. I'm not someone who's gonna just cuss someone out and get in their face. I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like, I will inform you how I can. If you still want to think how you do and be small-minded, it's not my fault. Like, do you? I tried. Let's see. Being able to pray their Down syndrome away, that does not work. Let's see. This person says, the common misconception that my child will always have to live with me or his father and that he won't go to a regular school. Again, people with Down syndrome, they can live, as far as I know, independently, maybe with a helper. I haven't looked too much into how often people with Down syndrome live completely independently. From my knowledge, they do still have a helper there. That way, to help them with daily tasks, things like that. So I'm not too sure how independent someone with Down syndrome can be, but they definitely can live out of the house. And, again, this is something that I think about for sure, but I know people who are 30, 40, 50. I know people who lived with their parents all their life and don't have Down syndrome. So what's the problem? Like, no, maybe it's not ideal, but people without Down syndrome do it. So it's not like, oh, it's because she has Down syndrome, she's gonna stay with you. My kid who doesn't have Down syndrome could maybe stay with me. Like, people are people. Let's see. This person says, I overheard someone say that the Down syndrome is caused by a mother drinking alcohol. Again, not true. Let's see. Oh, saying that the mother could have had done something to prevent it. No, I want to get that in people's head, because I feel like, you know, people say, oh, well, you're so young, why did it happen? And they think maybe I was doing something, but it can happen to anyone. Let's see. I'm trying to look at some other ones. If not, I feel like maybe those might have been the main ones that I hit on. This person says, common misconception, you're so lucky. He's always happy and so full of love. A special gift. Yeah, he is, but he's equally defiant and grumpy as all my other typical developing kid. Big-hearted and happy kids. So, yes, they will tell me, oh, yeah, when they find out Nova has Down syndrome. I knew someone with Down syndrome, and they were just so happy all the time. Just because someone has Down syndrome doesn't mean they lack other emotions aside from being happy, which I know people don't mean, oh, they're never going to be sad, but telling someone, oh yeah, they're happy all the time, so loving, like, they have emotions too. They're not happy all the time. You met someone. I live with this child, and even though Nova is still just a little baby, she, people who know her, she can throw a fit. She can definitely throw a fit. Yeah, I feel like those are kind of it. If you watched any of my videos, or if you watched none of my videos, I hope you watched this one all the way through just to learn a little bit. I mean, maybe this one wasn't as personal and you couldn't resonate with it because it wasn't part of my story, but those are definitely things that I feel maybe some people are scared to ask me. I think more appropriate questions would be, instead of asking, oh, who did she get it from? Your side or her dad's side? Maybe asking, oh, do you know what kind of Down syndrome your child has? Does she have trisomy 21 or mosaic? And so someone who's a parent, they'll be like, oh shit, they know what they're talking about. You know, so wording questions differently. I'm not saying it's like a deal breaker when talking to someone, like you're totally gonna offend someone if you don't, but these, again, are just things that I've heard, that other people have heard, that come up constantly, you know. Oh, she doesn't look it, so she must be okay. What side does it come from? Oh, your kid's probably always happy, you're so lucky. Why didn't you have an abortion? Or did you do something wrong to cause this? You know, those are, I mean, a lot of different things that people think. But I wanted to share that with you. I do want to make another video. It was about something, I don't remember. But yeah, those are some common misconceptions. If you guys have any questions about something, please comment below. Like, do not, or if you have my Twitter, don't feel afraid to ask me. I'm not gonna bite your head off. You know, just recently I was at my cousin's house and her daughter asked me, oh, why is her tongue sticking out? Talking about Nova. And I'm not gonna be like, hello, get your kid, she's asking rude questions. That's completely fine. Like, people are curious, people want to know, you know. I personally, when I have met someone who has a child that's autistic, I'm like, oh, well, how did you find out? When did you find out? When did you do testing to find out? How were you feeling? Like, you know, things like that. I think there's a line where, you know, okay, this is kind of inappropriate, and this is me being genuinely curious and nice about it and considerate about me asking questions. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, maybe learned a thing or two that you were wondering about.